Hey guys, this is Mike at Craft Beer Storm and also founder owner brewer at Brewer Brewing Company in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Today we are going to Sweden. We're going to talk to Jeff Brown, who's the founder and brewer at South Plains Brewing Company in Malmo, Sweden. The breadbasket of Sweden, Skåne. I used to live there actually for like about 6 months. Did some work there. And then I met Jeff, through actually as a women's American women's group. We met. He's a great chef, and he cooked us Thanksgiving dinner, and he opened a brewery. So I reached out to him, and he agreed to be on the podcast. And a lot of good stuff coming from Jeff. He's very experienced. So here we go. Hey, we're here with Jeff Brown. He is the founder and brewer of South Plains Brewing Company in Malmo, Sweden. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on.
No, thanks for coming on. I met Jeff, man, I don't know how long ago. I was doing some work in Sweden, living in Lund, in southern Sweden, right across from Copenhagen, and actually, I met Jeff. There was a women's group, an American women's group there, and they did Thanksgiving for people. So I brought the family over, and Jeff was the executive chef, and he made turkey for everybody in Sweden. We celebrated Thanksgiving, an American holiday. Now you're still doing that, Jeff? You're still doing that there?
I've been doing that for 13, 14 years now, I think.
Man,
yeah, I don't cater the Thanksgiving dinner anymore because I'm just too busy. So we turned it into a potluck, and we have I think we had 130 people this last year. It's men or women with Swedish wives or husbands, or also just pretty much anybody that speaks English, South Africans, Australians. And so it's just kind of a cultural thing to come together. I wanted my kids to experience Thanksgiving since we're living abroad, and it's kind of important to me to do it, so I enjoy it.
Yeah, it was cool. Yeah, I was living in England too, and it's not a popular English holiday there, Thanksgiving or 4th of July either, right?
Yeah. But I still roast the turkeys because since I did catering, I have a commercial oven, and so this last year I roasted 4 30-pound turkeys, and
that's cool.
So
that's a lot of turkey.
Yeah, they're huge. It's a lot of turkey, and then on top of that, I did what would that be? 15 kilos of mashed potatoes, and another 15 kilos of stuffing, and 10 liters of gravy, but then everybody else brings green Jello and everything else,
That's great. Yeah, no, coming together, community. It's good. Yeah, I remember that. It was awesome. It was a delicious meal. Now you're a chef, I guess, originally, or you got into food.
I am educated as a chef. I can just back up a little bit, and I sold my house in Walnut Creek, which is in the San Francisco Bay Area, in 1999. And I had injured my back working at the Oakland airport, and I'd been off on disability for quite a while. And I made a deal with the insurance company to retrain me because I had trained under a chef when I was at Westmont College in Santa Barbara. And so they paid for me to go to chef school. And so I went to Paris to École Roche-Escoffier, and I got a master's in French cuisine and a master's in French pastry. And I ended up working 2 years at the Ritz Club in Paris.
Wow.
And I met my wife in Copenhagen. She's Danish. I mean, in Paris, and she's from Copenhagen. She's Danish. And we came back to Copenhagen. And I tried to stay there, fought Danish immigration for a year, gave up on that, and came to Sweden, which is right across the channel from Copenhagen, so she could finish business school there. And then I worked as a chef for about 10 years here in Sweden and Copenhagen. And I was getting tired of it. Chefing's hard work. It's often late hours. It's often evenings and weekends, and you work all holidays. And so I went back to home brewing, which I'd been a long-time home brewer in San Francisco. And so I opened this microbrewery in 2012 and started producing beer on the local craft beer market here.
Yes,
that's kind of it. Kind of it in a nutshell.
Wow, what a journey! And you're six years in, so now you're in. Now, are you a citizen there in Sweden, or like dual citizenship?
I have lifetime residence permit, but I don't have a Swedish citizenship.
All right, but your wife is Danish, so is there like a?
My wife's Danish.
Yeah.
And all my kids are Danish and American citizenship.
But I remember the Swedish take everybody in as long as they learn Swedish. I think it was. As long as you can learn Swedish, then you know there's a place for you in Sweden.
Yeah, my kids, they speak. They're teenagers now, and they speak English and Swedish and Danish. So those are 3 great languages to have in this region.
Cool. Yeah, and then you got into brewing. I know we. I think I put a post out there for this. I was trying to get men together in Sweden, and then you responded to it. So they had some German beer on tap in Lund, Paulner, which I love that beer. And you're like, yeah, let's do it. So I met you there, and we had a couple pints, and
that's right.
That's how we met.
I've always been a big fan of beer.
Yeah, I mean, it was delicious, and and then I saw you started to open a brewery. Like, what is he doing? You know, he's a chef, and he's opening a brewery, and so it was interesting. And you gave me inspiration, and I opened my own here in 2014. We were living in England, and then.
Did I inspire you?
You did. I saw you open your brewery, and I'm like, wow, you're involved with food, and you were doing well. You were selling a lot of beer, right?
Yeah, I have. I've always sold a lot. It's a great market, and people here beer, and Swedes drink a lot of beer. They love beer, and I've always sold a lot from the very beginning. That's never been a problem.
That's great. What kind of system do you have now?
Well, I have a 12 hectoliter, 3-vessel brew house that I built. So it's 1,200 liters kettle, 1,200 liter mash tun, and a 700 liter hot water tank.
So what does that convert into gallons? We have a lot of Americans here. I think, what is that, like a 10 barrel?
Actually, you know what? I just thought it was 12. I think it's. Let me just double check that.
It's like 1,200 hectoliters.
Go ahead, and I'll just.
Yeah, it's all right. It's just a lot of beer. Well, it's a good amount of beer for a small brewer, and you're selling everything, so that's pretty good. And now, do you have kegs too that are going out?
I do. I have kegs. I fill kegs for local bars and restaurants. I export a little bit around Europe, and but probably about 70% of what I do is bottles sold in Systembolaget, which is the local state-run liquor store. Oh,
System, that's the the state-run liquor store. Is it still correct there that I think if it was under 3%, you could sell it in normal stores?
Under 3.5.
Under 3.5, but if it's over 3.5, you have to go to the liquor store there to buy the beer.
Yeah. Yes.
So
my system is a 10-barrel system.
10-barrel system, yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. So it's a nice size system, yeah. And you have
I actually built my brew house and built the brewery. I was doing private dinner parties at a place called Three Lily Buds, and the owner there, it's a really nice farmhouse out in the country. The owner there would spend winters in South Africa, and he was actually a pilot for Malmo Aviation. His name's Anders Paulson. And in the winters, he would go to South Africa and fly helicopters for the game wardens there in South Africa. And so I had this big place to myself, and I did a lot of private dinner parties there. And then I started brewing beer there. And he thought my beer was wonderful. And so we talked about doing a microbrewery together. And he was very excited to get into it because he liked the beer so much. But in the end, it didn't work out, and I did it by myself. And so to start up a microbrewery, I think it's about the same in the States. It's about 300 to 500,000. That's if you have somebody build you a brew house and install tanks and install the whole system.
Right.
And so it's a lot of money to come up with.
It is.
And so I actually I'm kind of a jack of all trades where I can build and fix anything. I've restored quite a few houses. And so I actually built my brew house with used equipment from southern Germany. Down in Bamberg, they've got football fields full of old used brewing equipment. And most of it's stainless steel. And, stainless steel can sit outside and it's good. And so a lot of my stuff, my kettle's 35 years old. And so I actually built my brew house in 2012 with 3 900-liter fermenting tanks. They were transport tanks. And opened for under $20,000 US, which was kind of amazing. Now, since then, I've probably put maybe a 100 or 200,000 into it, but it's been through sales. It's not been through loans or investors or partners or anything like that. So it's nice that I don't owe a lot of money to anybody. It's just mine, and I built it, and it works great. Now I've increased my capacity. I can do about 10,000 liters a month fermenting capacity, and I don't always do that because it's difficult to find the markets. That's 10,000 liters is 85 barrels. So I have that capacity, but lots of times I've got sour beers or I've got something sitting in one of the tanks that sits there for a few months. Wow. Lagers also take quite a while.
Lagers take a while too.
8 weeks.
How long does it take for you?
8 weeks for
lager.
lager.
It's a long time. It's like 2 months. You have to keep it in there.
Yeah.
But I mean, I kind of pieced mine together as well. I didn't buy a system. I bought. I had a tank from a pharmaceutical company who was going to scrap it. It was like a tank they sterilize water for medicine. Yeah. So we took that, and then we took a boiler from them. Like there was a boiler like in a corner in the original crate. We took that. We had a plumber connect everything.
Any stainless steel vessel will work. Of course, if you get something that's made for beer, it's a little bit better.
Yeah, but, I know. I know that.
You can ferment in they ferment in ceramic. But anything will work as long as you can sanitize it.
You got to keep it clean and sanitized. That's the whole key to beer. I mean, it has to be cleaned and sanitized. And, if you start using plastic, it's okay. But if you get pits, bacteria can hide in there, destroy your whole batch, and it's a mess. So we try to use stainless steel for everything. We also have our mash tun is an old dairy tank. I saw it online in Wisconsin. But they're insulated in stainless steel, so they're excellent. So we transfer our water in, our hot water, in order to mash in. The water has to be a constant temperature, and you mash the grain in, and then it has to stay that temperature, and it converts the starch to sugar. That's the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And then you create that wort, that sugar water, which you boil, and then you add hops in, and that's your start to beer. But it's worked for us, and we've had a pump and transferring with large like food grade hoses. Mm-hmm. So we've been doing it. We opened in 2014, so we just turned 4. So we do.
That's common with a lot of small microbreweries starting up that don't have a lot of money to cut some corners and use some dairy tanks or use another type of vessel or something from the pharmacy industry. It's quite common.
Yeah, I mean, it's a way to open up, and then we were able to do 7 barrels. So I do 7-barrel batches, and originally we had a distributor, and we were bottles originally, like you do the bottles, or 22-ounce bottles, and then they just phased out. Nobody wanted bottles anymore. Everyone wanted cans. We were talking about it a little bit, and I don't like cans. I mean, I like cans. Yeah. If I can make some money off of them. I mean, you're a business, I mean, if you do large volumes, you can make some money off of them. But, I've seen breweries go out of business because they just, we're going to do cans and be cool. And they went out of business, I
think cans look cool. I'm pretty much anti-can. And the reason is, unless there's been anything new that's come up, but I haven't heard, cans have a plastic liner on the inside. And plastic liners, soft plastic, contains PCBs and other chemicals that get in the beer, and long term they can cause cancer.
It's horrible.
And so, the more acidic the medium is inside the beer, the more chemicals it withdraws from the plastic. And so you put something like an IPA or a sour beer that's highly acidic in a can, it's going to really leach those chemicals out over time. And, part of my philosophy is I don't use any chemicals and I don't use any additives, and I want my beer to be clean, clear, and fresh. I want it to just have natural ingredients. And so my beer is all certified vegan. I don't use any gelatin, which comes from pork bones. I don't use any collagen or fish finings, which is basically ground up fish guts. I don't use any of that stuff because I don't know if it's the same in the U.S., but here in Sweden, a large part of the market for my beers, which are progressive craft beers, is the so-called tattooed hipster crowd. And many of them are vegan. And so it's very important for my customers that I don't use any animal products in my beer.
Oh yeah, I mean, we don't use any animal products either. I mean, we use unless we talk about bacon. Sometimes we introduce bacon in beer, but that's we say it's bacon chipotle barbecue like stout, but they know there's bacon in it. But the rest of it's we don't use additives and just try to do natural grain and it tastes really good. I mean, there's no. I mean, we keep it at a certain temperature, and we don't really use preservatives, but it's fresh beer, and you want to buy it fresh.
Yeah, I have about 15 beers on the market, and all of them, 14 of them are vegan, and one is vegetarian, and that one has honey in it, and honey, of course, comes from bees. So I can't certify that one vegan. But I can certify it vegetarian.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. But beer is normally that. But we do a podcast on Wednesdays as well. We talk about beer styles, so we go down the GABF list, and I just did one on gluten-free beer. Gluten-free beer. So I don't know. Do you make any of those or?
I have made them. I don't have one out right now. The classic way to make that is using sorghum.
Right.
And so you have to find a supplier for sorghum. And, sorghum, it doesn't really taste like malt. It has a different flavor.
Yeah.
But there's a new product out by, I believe it's White Labs in San Diego, has one called Clarity Firm. And it's an enzyme that you add during fermentation.
Right.
And what it does is it breaks up the proteins so small that anybody that's allergic to gluten will not have any type of reaction. So the beer can be certified gluten-free by using Clarity Firm, and it's because it breaks the protein so small. Now, it was originally made to – this is kind of like something that happened afterwards. It was originally made just to clarify beer, to give beer super clean. And later on they found out that it turns the beer gluten-free. Yeah. And so by using – I believe it's called Clarity Firm. Anyways, that's one way to get gluten-free beer.
Yeah, there's a place called Omission here. They use a similar process. I think they probably introduced that in, and they call it a gluten-free beer. They just make regular beer, then they introduce that, and people say it's good. People say the Omission's good. There's some other beers out there.
People that are allergic to gluten, they don't have any reactions to it because, like I said, the proteins are broken into too small.
Yeah. It's a big craze here, the gluten-free. Like everybody's gluten-free. And
is that,
people come in and they say, I reduced my gluten, or try to eliminate it, and I feel much better. They used to get headaches, and maybe they have a point. I don't know, because there's a lot of things being introduced to meat here and grain, pesticides and
Sure.
genetic modifications and GMO, and it's just food is changing, and you got to be careful what you eat. I try to eat I've been eating a lot more salads lately and fresh, organic stuff. And I feel a lot better. When you eat like processed stuff and meat, heavy meats. I used to eat
the GMOs you were talking about, those are illegal here in Europe.
Oh, is that right?
So we can't get any of that. And I don't want it really.
No.
I want 100% natural. And also, they have very high standards here for chemicals or pesticides. They can't use anything like that. So in Sweden and where I get my grains from Denmark, even if it's not labeled or certified organic or ecological, it still is ecological or organic because there's no chemicals or any additives or anything in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and that's important to me, to use 100% natural products.
Oh, absolutely. So talking about natural products, I mean, do you have any local products you use in there? Like we use honey, local honey. There's a guy who has honeybees.
Sure.
And,
Sure.
maple, I don't know if you have any maple trees there, but we use maple syrup.
We don't.
Yeah.
And I looked at using maple syrup, but the maple syrup's got to come from Canada, and it gets quite expensive by the time I need.
By the time it gets there.
I need 20 or 30 kilos.
Yeah, I know, right?
I need like 50 pounds of syrup, or yeah.
Yeah, I go up the street here or whatever, like I'll travel 20 minutes, and then the guy has a maple tree farm, and he'll give me 5 gallons of maple syrup, and it's okay,
Yeah, but I have a saison, like a French farmhouse saison that I make, and I ferment it on red beets and raspberries. And the red beets, I mean, they're all local Swedish. The red beets, they kind of give it a nice kind of purplish color,
right,
and a little bit of an earthy flavor. And then the raspberries, of course, that's a nice raspberry flavor. And the combination is very nice.
Wow,
and on a
beets,
saison,
huh?
which is kind of, on a saison, it's kind of fruity and tangy and tart. It goes very well together.
So explain the saison to people here, because we have, we have a wide audience, and we're trying to convert people to craft beer. That's our whole goal. So maybe explain about the saison, what kind of style it is, and what do you use, the type of yeast?
Okay.
Yeah.
Normally, when you brew beer, you use an ale yeast or a lager yeast.
Mm-hmm.
A saison is its own category. It's a type of a wild yeast, and it's the kind of yeast that that they make in the French farmhouses, or Belgian farmhouses, and they've been making that for a long, long time. And basically, it's the wild yeast in the air, or it's the wild yeast that's been developed that they used over and over.
Mm-hmm.
And so wild yeast can be a little bit sour. It can be a little bit tart. It can be tangy. Some people describe it as kind of a peppery flavor. It can be highly acidic. And so a saison, which means season in French, it's a seasonal beer that you make. It has its own special flavor. And it's difficult to explain. I would say people just go out and look for a saison and try one, and then and maybe taste another one, and then you'll understand what they taste like. They're very special, and I really love them. They're a wonderful beer.
Yeah, they are.
The yeast, normally when you make a beer, the yeast will not ferment all the sugars. It will leave some residual sugars, and that will give you body in a beer.
Mm-hmm.
But in a beer like a saison, it ferments all the sugars all the way down to zero. So it will eat all the sugars in there. So it's often a little bit dry. There won't be any residual sweetness, and it will also be a little bit watery. It won't have any body because there's no residual sugars left.
Right.
That's just the style.
Yeah. It's kind of a thin beer, but it's tasty, It's kind of a French, Belgian origins.
Exactly. Comes from Wallonia, I think, or something like that originally.
Because they had this restaurant, Belgo, I remember in London. I don't know if you've been there, but man, they had like 100 Belgian beers on tap, but it was delicious. Or bottles. Oh man, Belgian beer is really
Yeah.
good if you get really good. Some
Yeah.
people try to do sours here, and it's like vinegar. I'm like, dude, this is better for a salad. It's not really good to drink. Sorry.
Yeah,
You got to
sours
know
are,
what you're doing. Like, I haven't done any sours or, because you got to know what you're doing. I should try
you
it. But
do. It's its own ball game.
yeah,
It's a different level.
yeah.
I do quite a bit of sour beers. And talking about vinegar, how they taste like vinegar,
Mm-hmm.
that would mean that, it could be a couple of things. One is they could have wild yeast infections, which is kind of a phenolic taste.
Right.
Or also it could be that, especially home brewers, they probably have a lot of oxygen in it when it ferments. And oxygen in sour beers will create acetic acid, which is vinegar. And so a lot of the homebrew sour beers, they taste a little on the vinegary side. Mm-hmm. When I brew my sour beers, I do a special technique where I deprive the fermentation of oxygen. So I'll sanitize my fermenter. I'll fill my fermenter with CO2, and then I'll bring it in from the bottom so that the wort is never exposed to oxygen. And then when you deprive the oxygen in the fermentation of a sour beer, it will develop it more into sour lemon, sour pineapple flavors instead of vinegar.
Wow, that's interesting. That's an interesting technique.
It's a technique. There's a lot of techniques, a lot of little techniques you do. And I would say a good place to learn about it mm-hmm. would be like you could read American Sour Beers. Is a great book to read on it. It's by Michael Tonsmier. He's, mm-hmm. I think, the mad fermentationist.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, how's the brewing community there? Do you have breweries near you, other breweries, or?
Yes. There's, in this southern region we're in now, there's about 35.
Oh, wow.
And, and so it's really grown. When I first started in 2012, there was about 5.
Wow.
And so, it's really grown. When I first started in 2012, I did an American Pale Ale that was 40 IBU and a dry hop with, a nice floral dry hop. And it was considered extreme then. And it was only the extreme French cafes that were serving that kind of thing. But now something like that is completely mainstream. And now you go to a festival, and every brewery has an IPA, an American style IPA.
Yeah, yep. That's the popular style. It doesn't go away. It just gets bigger and bigger.
When I first started, nobody was doing that kind of style here.
Right.
And everyone thought my beers were kind of strange because that's the style I was doing. And the style that they were doing was more like an English IPA, which
more
is
bitter,
but not the dry hop.
Right. But if you dry hop, you introduce the hops towards the end of the boil, or you dry hop, meaning after the beer is done, you just, after fermentation, you just throw hops in and circulate it, or just let it sit. And that's what we do here. They love dry hopping, because it releases all the good aroma and the flavors of the hop.
Oh, yeah, it adds so much.
Now I'm going to experiment with hop oil. I got some being shipped to me, and we're going to try to infuse that in, because now I have the whole big thing is the New England style IPAs here, the hazy, hop bombs.
Yes. I've never actually used hop oil, but I've heard that you get a much better bitterness off of it than you do the floral dry hop aroma.
Yeah. So we're going to try to experiment with it a little bit. Like I have 15 gallons of beer. We're just going to get a sample and see how it works out. But I mean, you're trying to extract the oils from the hops anyway. It's just a way to, just another process where you just go directly and, it saves a lot of time and effort, but it gives you
you won't know until you try.
No, you won't know. Yeah. So we're going to try to experiment with that and see what happens. But that's the way things are trending. It's just like any industry. It's like, all right, do I want to write a letter on a piece of paper and mail it, or do I want to open my laptop and do an email?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same
Mm-hmm.
thing. So, but yeah, so you find the local scene is good. I see that the craft beer scene in Europe, in general has grown tremendously. Even in Ireland, visiting Ireland, we see a lot more breweries popping up, craft beer. They're making good stuff, and it's kind of a wave across Europe. So I think the what we started here is is going across. And yeah, the can thing is killing me. I go into stores and I see how all the shelves, it's ridiculous. Like all the coolers and shelves are full of cans, just full of cans. Everybody's in cans, and I don't know. It's the same liquid, it's just a different package, and stores won't take it if it's in a bottle. They're like, nah,
really?
It's in a bottle. Yeah, they won't take it. Like if it's a large, like we used to do 22-ounce bottles. I still do them here, and I sell them in the tap room. But they'll take them, but they're like, oh, it's going to take me so long to sell. I'm like, why is it going to take you so long to sell? It's the same liquid, and at least it gives us a little margin so we can make some money and keep the business going, for small, especially for small breweries. So I'm trying to reverse the trend. I started, this Christmas, actually, we did an Oreo infused Java porter, which people like, and they loved it. They love the beer. But I'm like, you know what? If you want this beer, it's going to be in a 22-ounce bottle, and that's it. And they were cool with it. They're like, okay, that's fine. So I went to the beer stores and I said, look, this is the package. Do you want it? And they're like, yeah. We marked up the price a bit, just to, at least so both of us can make some money off of it. And so far it's working. So I'm trying to reverse the trend, We'll see what happens, but I got the podcast. So I'm going to try to blast it out there, and it's good to have people like you that don't like cans. It's awesome. They have crowlers here too. I don't know if do they have the crowler thing there where you could fill a large 32-ounce can and then seal it up? I got to get one of those.
Well, the thing is, here you can only drink. How do I say this? You go out to a bar, that's called immediate consumption. And they give you a glass of beer and you drink it there. But then you cannot take a beer with you that's over 3.5% if it's packaged. You can only buy that at the state-run liquor store.
Oh, wow.
So the only thing you can take in growlers is 3.5 or under.
Oh, man. So that's all like the brewery tap rooms. Are you allowed tap rooms there? Like people come in and do flights?
There's lots of them. We thought about doing that for a long time. I've never done it. And some of the bars here, they can package you up, a quart or a liter bottle of their beer. That's 3.5, and seal it up, and you get to take it home and a growler.
But anything over that, you can't.
A nice jug with their logo on it, but
you don't. So you don't have a tap room there?
No, I don't have a tap room. I only sell to bars, restaurants, the Systembolaget, and
wow,
export.
You should really look into that, man. It's a good.
I know.
It's a good margin. I mean, you just get a kegerator with like 4 tap lines, and the people will just flock there.
I know. The thing is, we're a small company, and to tell you the truth, I've got my hands full as it is now to think about handling a restaurant too.
Well, you don't. Do you have to serve food there, or can you just serve beer?
You do.
Oh, you have to serve food.
Yes.
Well, that's another story too. Yeah, so because when you get into food,
and
yeah,
the thing is, I'm trying to cut back my workload. I don't want to add more to it.
No, I understand that. I understand. Like here, you can have a tap room. Like we have a Nano Plus license in New Hampshire, so I can do samples. And actually, if I serve some limited food, like I do paninis and stuff like that, and chicken fingers, and I can serve pints. So that's allowed. I mean, I don't have to have a full blown restaurant, which I don't want. I don't want a full blown restaurant because I don't know anything about restaurants. And I know a lot of breweries I've seen. Yeah, I've seen a lot of breweries that open restaurants, and they're brewers, home brewers, and we're going to brew, and then they brew, and they open a restaurant, and then they just fold, because the restaurant takes everything over. And
not only that, first, if I did that, I'd be working in the evenings on top of the brewery.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that.
No, well, you got your family and stuff.
I've got teenage kids, and it's more important for me to be available for them and do things with them than it is to have tap room.
No, absolutely. Look, you're following your passion, and you're making a business out of it. I mean, you're selling to the state. I mean,
it's a great idea, and the thing is, I'm very qualified to do that because I could do a fabulous menu. I could do, I had actually thought about doing like very gourmet food and serving like some really nice sour beers and craft beers, and serve them in a wine glass and pair beers with menus. And I'm really qualified to do that, but it's too much work, and
that's
too much
a lot
time.
of work, man. Well, yeah, a restaurant. Then it turns into a restaurant. It's no longer a brewery. It's a restaurant.
I've known people that have started restaurants, and when you start a restaurant, you're working there 12 hours a day, and when you're not working, you're worrying about it.
I know.
And it just consumes you. It consumes you.
12 hours is like not. Yeah, that's on the low end.
I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that.
No.
And on top of that, when you start up a restaurant, it costs a tremendous amount to start up. But before you even open, you have to have 1 year of reserves in the bank. You have to be prepared to lose money for 1 year. And so you got to have some funding behind you if you think you're going to make it work. Because the first year, you'll probably lose money.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you need a lot of capital.
It's normal in the restaurant business.
You need a lot of capital. Yep.
Yeah.
There's no guarantees, Restaurants open and close quickly.
Yeah.
I've seen it. Like some restaurants, like they'll last like a month. Like they'll open up a couple restaurants around here. Like they just poured a lot of money into it.
I know.
Build it out. It's beautiful. You go inside. It's like, wow, this is awesome. And then like 2 months later, they're just shut down. Like, what happened?
They don't have the reserves to keep it open.
Yeah. So.
Or maybe they've got some investors that have come in to help them get open, but they don't have the reserves. You have to have the reserves, or you won't be able to stay open long term. You have to be prepared that you can go a quite long periods without making money.
And that's food.
Also, then also it can be feast or famine, where you could be super busy in the summer and have nobody in the winter.
Yeah, seasonal.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Depends on where you are.
So here in Sweden, salaries are quite expensive.
Mm-hmm.
It's much higher than the U.S. Here in Europe, American tourists come to Europe, and they think that they need to tip the waiter. But here in Europe, nobody tips because waiters get very high salaries.
Yeah.
Everybody does.
The tipping thing has, it's caused a lot of problems actually for one establishment near me here, and they ended up closing, unfortunately. They're great guys, but they went to a no tipping scheme, and the price of the food went up. They built it into the food. They said, all right, no tips. And I guess the employees weren't happy because American mindset is like, I need tips. They work for low wages.
A better solution might have been just to give the employees better wages to offset the tipping.
I think that's what they were doing. That they tried to give them better wages and also some benefits, like health benefits and stuff like that. And they tried to go to that model. And but in the end,
costs are too high.
And in the end, it's just people were upset with it, and and then the prices went up, and then the patrons were like, "Why are the prices going up?" And it just didn't work out. But in Europe, it's a totally different model. It's like no tipping. Yeah. When I give, I was in London, I'm giving a guy. I paid for the cab, and then I gave him like a couple pounds. He's like, "Oh, are you sure? Are you sure you want to give me this?" Take it. I mean, you took me around, and take it. It's fine. He's like, "Oh, thank you so much." They don't expect it.
Nobody does that here.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want a tip, you would leave just like a couple of coins at the most.
Yeah.
You wouldn't leave like a couple of pounds. You'd leave a couple of pence.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a different mindset there. But
Yeah.
yeah, but Sweden was great. I mean, I lived there I was about there for about 6 months, and nice people there. I had some good opportunities. Very nice. And but now, how about the big beer scene there, and how it affects the local craft beer market? I know they have InBev out there. Diageo.
Mass-produced beers?
Yeah, mass-produced beers.
Well, here in Sweden we have Spendrups, which is a big kind of like a light lager. There's Mariestad. There's Carlsberg, of course, from Copenhagen, and Tuborg. Those are kind of the big ones here. And then there's some smaller ones too. But, most people in Denmark and in Sweden drink a light lager.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of like a Bud or a Coors, that kind of thing.
Right.
I mean, that's what they sell the most of. Even if you go to like the big beer festivals, like Gothenburg, Gothenburg, a lot of people consider that kind of the beer capital of Sweden. And you go to the Gothenburg Beer and Whiskey Festival, which is a huge festival. And the number one selling beer is Melonrud, which is a medium size brewery, and they sell a light lager. And that's the number one selling beer at the festival. So that kind of shows you a little bit about what kind of people are at the festival. That's what they're drinking, is light lagers.
Light lagers, yeah.
Craft beer is it's a very small part of the market here. It's maybe 5%.
Uh-huh.
So the other 95% are drinking light lagers.
Right. Yeah.
Now it started like that in the States too. If you go back to like the mid 90s, craft beer was like 5%.
Right. It has grown. I mean, it's about 11% now, I think, like overall, like in the U.S. So it's still a fraction of the total beer produced.
But if you go back, like 95, even then, craft beer was like Peach Wicked Ale, Samuel Adams Boston Lager, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. They weren't too extreme.
No.
They were pretty moderate, but they sold a lot, and that's how they grew.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a very interesting industry. I mean, I got into it. The brewers were fantastic in the area here, and I always had the idea of making beer with Irish barley, because I ate the bread, and I'm like, why doesn't he make a good Irish beer here? And I did it in the basement, and then one thing led to another. I did the Kickstarter. I think I emailed you a couple times. I don't know if we spoke. We might have spoken in the past, but and then one thing led to another. Then I had a job up here. I'm a CPA, did the audit thing, and then they outsourced the role. So I'm like, all right, what am I doing now? And so we opened the brewery to try to make something happen, and trying to follow the passion and do something to help people. And but it's been a wild journey and a wild ride. Not for the faint of heart. Not for the faint of heart. If you think you're just going to open and if you have heart conditions, do not open a brewery. All right. It's a wild ride, but you know what? In the end, you look at it and say, "Wow, man, I did that." I opened it up, and I'm still alive. People have opened after me, and they've closed, and I'm still alive. I don't know how I'm doing this, but but people, more people get turned on to your brewer every day, and then they tell people, and then it just kind of grows from there. And then it's good to have people come in. You have a flight, they try one little sample of each. We don't have a tap room there, but it's great to see people. They try a little sample of each beer, and then they're like, "Wow, there's not one beer that I don't like. I mean, this is great." I'm like, that just keeps you going. Just that comment just keeps you going. So, and that's what you need. You need that. that kick to just say, okay, I'm doing this for a reason, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I guess you guys got good comments too coming out. You have people, you know, do you ever go out? Do you do like pint nights or something, or just go out and say, hey, this is my beer, and why don't you try it?
Absolutely. Yeah? I go out and I, you know, meet people and talk to people and do tastings and in restaurants and bars and these kinds of things. And, you know, we have a pretty large social media platform. And so because of that, I do Facebook. We have about 5,000 followers on Facebook. And then I have more, that's on my personal, then I have more on the brewery, and then I have more on another festival page I have. And then there's Instagram, and then there's Twitter, and then there's Tumblr, and then I do YouTube videos. And so it's a little bit odd, but since I always post everything I'm doing, Facebook is kind of more, or the website's kind of more about what we do. Facebook is kind of more about what's happening, and Instagram is more about what we did today. And so, but when I go to a tasting, everyone follows what I do. And so it gets kind of odd because I really can't say anything I've done because they already know everything.
That's cool.
I say, oh, I did the Burning Witch, and they're like, yeah, we saw the post. I'm like, yeah, and well, we're making a say so. Yeah, we saw that too.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's kind of odd.
It kind of takes you back, right? Yeah, it takes you.
Yes, it does, because they know and they follow everything I do, and so it gets to the point where I almost can't even say anything.
You just show up.
Because they already know.
You start signing autographs. Say, hey, I'm Jeff. You know, because that's what it is too. I get taken aback. It's like, yeah, I saw you. Yes. You made that last week. I'm like, how did you know? I'm like, oh, I posted something on that. You know, like on Instagram or Facebook. But you got to be out there. But you're documenting your journey, which is what it's all about. You know.
And you know, people like to see what you're doing.
Right. Absolutely. You know, and they love coming in. Sometimes we give them tours of the brewery and show them the process, and they don't realize how much it's involved.
You know, I do tours, I do tastings, and I welcome people here all the time. People want to stop by.
That's awesome.
And, so the brewery's always open. Usually, you know, I've got on some rain boots, and I'm hosing yeast off the floor or cleaning a tank or something like that. But, yeah, they're welcome to come in.
Yeah, it's great. You know, and to set up a brewery, too, it's not an easy thing to get it going and, you know, the cost in it. I mean, we're trying to sell this location. I'm trying to scale up, and a lot of people come through and they're like, oh, yeah, well, I can do this for X amount. I'm like, no, you can't. Take your budget and double it, and that's your base then. It takes a lot of money and a lot of time to open a brewery and build out, and, you know, it's just when you put it together. So, you know, this is what I'm seeing. And then sometimes people go nuts. Like they'll just find investors and they'll buy like, you know, 30-barrel system right off the bat and just start brewing beer. And then they run into problems because they can't service the debt, and then the bank takes it over. That's usually what happens. So you have to start small, get it going, get established. It's going to take you some years. And then from there you can decide where you want to go and do it the right way. Yeah.
You know, the things that are tough is, you know, as you know, and if you have a lot of home brewers listening to your show, to brew a simple ale it's pretty easy. And you can brew a simple ale, and it's very good to drink. It's as good or better than you can buy.
Yeah.
But just because you can brew a simple ale doesn't mean you can run a business.
No.
Running a business is much more complicated. You have accounting, and you have marketing, and you have regulations, and you have taxes, and you have permits, and you know, you're dealing with expensive equipment. You need bottling machines and labeling machines and chillers and tanks. And I mean, it gets really complicated. A lot of breweries start up with great ideas that, you know, hey, wait till they taste my red ale. It's the best thing that's ever been out there.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it may be, but just because it's a great red ale doesn't mean you're going to make it as a brewery.
No.
There's so much more to do and so much more to handle that it's a massive project for anyone.
Yeah. It's the marketing, or the you got to let people know you're there, and you have a red ale, but maybe there's 5 red ales in your area.
Yeah.
Then you got to
And
compete with
for
them.
me,
Yeah.
I'm kind of a jack of all trades, and I can do a lot of things. But things like marketing, well, that's not really one of my strong points. Neither is bookkeeping,
right?
Accounting. Those are not really my strong points. I can do them, but I'm not really that good at them.
Right.
And you have to be good at like 10 different things to make this work.
Absolutely. It's just you have to do everything, or if you can't, you need somebody to do it for you.
Exactly.
Who knows what they're doing, and then do it correctly. Yeah.
Yeah, somebody that knows what they're doing. Right.
Absolutely.
Or else the whole thing's going to fall apart.
Yes. That's what it is.
And then on top of that, it kind of goes back to the same thing I said about the restaurant. You need a lot of money to start up, and you need reserves. You need reserves, or else when you the money stops coming in, you won't make it.
Yeah.
So you have to have reserves too.
You got to have some reserves, and you have to scale. Start small, especially with breweries. You got to start small, and then grow from there. Grow it.
And selling and producing beer. You invest all this money in putting together a microbrewery. Then you buy all the raw materials to make it. Then you make the beer. Then you bottle the beer. Then you package it and get it ready to go. And then you deliver it to restaurants. So then you've maybe got 2 months since you made the original investment on all those raw materials.
Yeah.
Then you sell the beer. Then the customer wants 30 days. So then you've got another month. So now it's like 3-4 months from your original investment, and you're trying to get your money back. Then you have a hard time getting them to pay.
That's right.
And then, sometimes they don't pay. And so then you put out this money, and you're not getting it back.
You're a bank. Yeah.
And you're chasing them around trying to get them to pay your invoices. And so that's a difficult thing. For us with the state-run liquor store, that's good because they order, for me, like 40 to 60, sometimes 80 cases a week.
That's great.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. I'm in like 6 local boutiques, and that part is great. But dealing with them, there's never a problem get paid. I send in my invoice. I get paid always exactly on the day.
Oh, yeah.
So that part's good.
Well, it's all electronic there. It's like no checks and stuff like that.
Exactly. Everything's
it's Euro, right? What is it? GIRO? I think it was.
Yeah, like Bank Zero. But yeah, I just do everything on their web portal, and everything's taken care of there.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
And I can do my deliveries, and then in the afternoon I send in the invoice. And
we had a store here,
paid, yeah, and then we're paid right on time.
We had a store here at a third party, and what I would do is just scan in the invoice, send it to them, and like the next day, like the funds were in my account. It was ridiculous, Yeah. I'm like,
nice, huh?
Wow. Yeah, but it's just
something else.
That's what we need. I think more people should do this, Like the checks are still big here. Like, I went to Europe. I did some work in Europe. It's like, only third world countries use checks. I'm like, it's huge in the States.
I know.
It's huge in the States. It's like, there's got to be a lobby here. I think there's got to be a lobby, paper lobby or something. I don't know.
Because when I came to Sweden, when I was in France in 1999, they were moving away from checks. They were like, nobody uses checks here anymore. But you can still write a check. Do you want checks? We can get you some, but we're moving away from them. I'm like, no, I don't need it. They go, just use this debit card. You can use this for everywhere you go. And I got my debit card from the French bank, and I used that. And I never wrote checks.
Absolutely.
And even for my rent, I had a place where I would just go on my bank. I would make some payments. It would go right to them. Yeah. And so now this whole thing with checks, I haven't used it for so long. And here, and this is kind of a weird thing, but here Sweden's really becoming a cashless society where you don't really need cash. Nobody uses cash. You use your debit card for everywhere you go, everything you do. Right. There's nothing to spend cash on. Yeah. And for festivals even, we use something called Swish, which is something you can do on your phone. and you just punch in a telephone number on your phone, the other people's telephone number, and you can send them money. And so lots of festivals, you just swish money back and forth.
That's
and
great.
No one uses cash. Yeah. And, to me, it's odd because after a festival, I've got a bunch of cash. And then it's hard to get it in the bank because the banks don't take cash.
Wow.
If you can even imagine such a thing, the banks don't take cash.
That's crazy.
To get the money in, you have to go to like an automatic teller thing and deposit cash there. And you're limited on the amounts you can put in.
Wow. They're shying away from cash. Well, yeah, I mean, what do you need? I mean, it's all antiquated, old, I guess it goes like back to when people, had ships and sailed to different places, and then they had gold and they exchanged the physical gold for whatever their product. And that's the way it was a long time ago. But now it's all electronic, man. It's just, we have Square here too. We see a lot more people using their, cards, but also even their phones. Like they have the Apple Pay. So they just hold their phone up to like some sensor and it just withdraws the money that way, So.
Yeah, we have that too. Up to a limited amount, you just touch it.
Yeah. So, that's a cool way way things should be, instead of the checks are ridiculous, they have it's just the float. Yeah. So, all right. Yeah. So, we're coming up to our time here, but, is there anything?
Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
That is that I want to tell about, we do a festival every year called Hopapalooza. And it's to celebrate local craft beer. And what I've done is I started this festival and I invite only local breweries. Now, last year we had 32 local breweries. We had about 130 local beers on tap.
Wow.
We set up a stage and I had 10 live bands. We played mostly hard rock, but we also played some jazz and some country western and Motown. And we had 6 food trucks came in, and we had about 6,000 people come.
Wow!
And we poured about 22,000 beers.
Man!
And we set up in a park. It's a great thing.
That's an awesome thing.
It's all to promote the local craft beer industry and let people become aware of local beers and local breweries that they don't know.
Wow!
And I'm all for the local economy and local craft beer. I love beers from California, and I drink them there when I go, but I would never buy them here because it's a massive carbon footprint to get that beer over here.
Right.
When there's literally thousands of great beers here if you just knew where they were. And so this festival, it's July 27th this year. I don't know if anybody's coming to Sweden July 27th. You should come to Hopapalooza. You can go on my Facebook page, which is Facebook/South Plains Brewing Company, or also, we have a page for Hopapalooza, which is Facebook/Hopapalooza. And anybody that's coming to Sweden, I just would encourage you to come to this festival and taste a lot of great beers. It's free to get in, and beers cost about $2 for tasting once you're in. And like I said, 130 beers, you can't taste them all.
That's great. Yeah, I was just going to ask you the question, and you just gave the answer to everything.
Okay.
About local and where to find you, and you just wrapped it up in one nice package. But that's what we're all about,
You get a pitch for my festival too.
That's awesome. No, I think that's fantastic. 6,000 people is a lot of people. That's great.
Yeah, I'm the organizer and promoter of that festival. I've been doing it for about 5 years now. It's slowly grown over the years. We used to charge to come in, but now it's free. And now we're hooked up with the city, and they love what we're doing, and we're working with them. And they help us, and we help them.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Festivals are great. It brings people together, and it promotes the local beer, which is what we're all about. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, promote local and just let people know that there is an alternative to this mass-produced beer. It's your local craft brewery, and these people are in your community. They have kids. They're trying to support their families, and it's a struggle, to be a brewer. It's cool, but it's their passion. This is what they want to follow, and they're just trying to express themselves. We're all kind of artists, have our own beer.
It's definitely a creative creative industry.
It's a creative industry, and that's kind of why I like it. I do the CPA thing. It really doesn't do a lot for me. It brings income in. It brings income in, but, you know.
Me, with background as a chef, before I balanced flavors on food, and now I balance flavors on beer.
Yeah, and you got the food, the chef
simpler
aspect. Yeah, I have to try your beers. I haven't had them, and I must come there and try to make it over to Hopapalooza. It was in July 27th. I will be there 1 year, but we'll try to figure out the journey. Maybe I'll go across. You know, I have a lot of ideas. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But no, good. Jeff, I appreciate you being on the podcast. Very interesting information, and I'm glad you gave us a lot of insight on what's happening in Sweden. And you know, your knowledge is great, and you know, I appreciate meeting you. I think you're a great guy, and you know, I hope we meet again if you're here in the Northeast. If you do come by, let me know.
If I ever come out that way, for sure, I will look you up.
Definitely, absolutely. You let me know, and then if I'm down that way again, I will stop into your brewery and try your delicious beer. But okay. Cool. All right, Jeff. Well, I appreciate you being on.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. All right, man. Okay, we'll talk soon.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye. And there was Jeff Brown. He is the founder brewer at South Plains Brewing Company. He had a lot of great information about what's happening in Sweden and his techniques. And you know, like I tell you, he's a chef. Got trained in France, so fantastic. I mean, I've had his food; it's delicious. So he knows what he's doing with food, and he knows what he's doing with beer. So if you hear this podcast, you're in Sweden or Copenhagen in Denmark. Find his beer and you know, get it. He doesn't have a tap room, which is unfortunate, but I can understand if you have a tap room there, you have to serve some food, and that's just a headache. You know, you have to be focused in on that, and you have to know what you're doing in terms of a restaurant. You know, brewing beer is one thing, but when you start getting into serving actual food, it's like a lot of cash going out and unknowns and. But anyway, if you like this podcast, if you like what we're doing, you know, you'll like the guests that we have on, please, I ask you one thing, only ask you one thing, actually two things. One thing is to go on to iTunes and give us a rating, give us a review. That just helps us get us up in the rankings for iTunes, and it just promotes what we're doing and gets the word out that we're trying to promote craft beer, and it helps local people as well, local breweries. And then number two, if you like this podcast, share it with a friend or share it with 10 friends or 10X here. And you know, that helps us out as well and gets the word out. So that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed our podcast, and we'll talk to you soon.